My name is Bobby. History repeats itself in the great house of Collinwood, as new foes use old plots, and writers run out of ideas.
Carolyn, look at this photo. See if you see anything special. Do you get the feeling that there's someone there watching us? And if there is, who is it? Hi, I'm Bobby, and we are back with Dark Shadows. In our last Dark Shadows video, which focused on the 1995 storyline, we saw Collinwood in total destruction. Now in this story of Gerard's ghost, we see just how it got destroyed, which are episodes 1071 to 1109, and DVD volumes 22 to 23. But will the destruction of Collinwood coincide with the destruction of Dark Shadows? The Dark Shadows writers got the bulk of their ideas from classic Gothic horror stories, like Dracula, Frankenstein, and The Turn of the Screw. The only time they ever majorly deviated from this formula was when they got ideas from the writer H.P. Lovecraft for the Leviathan story. And fans hated that story, and the ratings dropped. After that disaster, the writers decided to stick to what they knew worked. And they had just finished a story set in the future, the year 1995, which showed Collinwood in ruin. Now they had to go back to the present and explain how it happened. Unfortunately, they were running out of ideas, and they were running out of classic Gothic horror stories. So for the second time in the series, they decided to adapt Henry James's novel, The Turn of the Screw.
During this storyline, the old Dark Shadows gang began to go their separate ways. Don Briscoe, who sadly developed a drug problem, had left the series months ago, along with Denise Nickerson and Lisa Richards. But in this story, Quentin actually mentions it, so we officially know that they're not coming back.
I was just thinking about Chris. I hated to see him, Sabrina, and Amy go away together like they did. I can't help but think what may be happening to them.
While Louis Edmonds would return, he doesn't appear at all in this story. Clarice Blackburn, who played the maid Mrs. Johnson, makes her final appearance, and Catherine Lee Scott, who had been there from the beginning, playing Maggie Evans, Barnabas's lost love Josette Dupre, and other characters, left to get married to the photographer Ben Martin and live in Paris. Behind the scenes, writer Violet Wells had left months ago, and her replacement, veteran Dark Shadows writer Joe Caldwell, was leaving now too, leaving Gordon Russell and Sam Hall as the show's only writers. Most significantly, however, Dan Curtis, who had always been the creative heart of Dark Shadows, was getting burnt out and losing interest in the series.
Dan Curtis was ready to move on, and so were the longtime actors like Jonathan Frid, who played Barnabas. And with the ratings dropping and more people watching Gomer Pyle reruns than Dark Shadows, which was on at the same time, it was evident that the audience was ready to move on too. Shazam!
Barnabas and Julia escape 1995 through a staircase into time and return to 1970. They warn the others of the upcoming disaster that will take place at Collinwood. Elizabeth doesn't believe it. But, being the responsible matriarch of the family, she has Sebastian Shaw do her horoscope so she can find out for herself. However, at Roxanne's insistence, Sebastian leaves several disturbing predictions out of the horoscope. Barnabas falls in love with this Roxanne, believing her to be the same Roxanne from Parallel Time. The evil ghost of Gerard appears at Collinwood, as does the mysterious playroom and the ghost of Daphne, who becomes a comfort to the children and enchants Quentin. David and Hallie become possessed by the ghosts of Ted and Carrie from 1840. Barnabas and Julia see the clues that indicate that Gerard is taking over, but remain unable to stop him. Maggie Evans, who has the tastiest blood in town, goes under the spell of an unknown vampire, and Gerard sends his pirate zombies to destroy Collinwood.
The 1995 story was so eerie because it was the mystery of how was Collinwood destroyed. And when this story starts, that eeriness carries over, and you're waiting for signs to occur. And you know the ending's going to be great and action-packed, which it is. But the problem is the three plots that get us there. In 1995, the insane Carolyn gave Barnabas and Julia a list of events that take place before the destruction of Collinwood. And in 1970, Barnabas and Julia are busy researching Gerard and waiting for these events to occur.
One of the clues is that Carolyn will sing her song. Now be quiet or you'll ruin it for the others. Now I'm going to sing my favorite song. I wanna dance with you, gonna dance my cares away. To glow! I'll be so close to you, in your arms I'll always stay. Carolyn, stop! 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 It's too late. It's over. Barnabas, Carolyn sang her song.
The scenes themselves are creative, and that particular one is hilarious. But because Barnabas and Julia aren't able to stop or even hold off these events from taking place, they just happen dun dun dun. There's no suspense of are they going to be able to save Collinwood or not, because we know the answer is no. Then there's the subplot of Maggie being attacked by a vampire. This happened to her during the first Barnabas storyline, so it's nothing new, but I always like the vampire material. Plus, they keep the vampire's identity a secret, which is groovy, and the eventual reveal is groovy too. But what's not so groovy is the major plot of the ghosts of Gerard and Daphne possessing David and Hallie. As I mentioned, this is an adaptation of The Turn of the Screw, but they had already done it 2 years ago, when the ghosts of Quentin and Beth possessed David and Amy. Now the series has repeated itself in small ways here and there, but repeating a major storyline, it's just obnoxious, it's uncreative, and frankly they did it better the first time.
2 years ago, David and Amy were more fleshed out. Amy had her brother Chris, and David had his father Roger, whom under Quentin's influence David tried to kill. But then on his own, David went to his father and was concerned about him. Their relationship wasn't perfect, but that's what made it seem real. With this new version, Hallie has her uncle, Professor Stokes, but there's no closeness between them like there was with Amy and Chris. And Roger isn't in this story, so both of them just seem like generic kids, and it makes it hard to care about them. Making it even worse, they are too old for a children's playroom. No wonder David Hennessy left acting. He's 14. This is embarrassing. And their attempts at making them act like teenagers don't work well either.
How did all this junk get here?
Junk? I don't understand.
Will you stop acting like the world's #1 weirdo?
Weirdo? What does it mean?
You know perfectly well what it means.
The word weird is not unfamiliar, but the addition of the letter O is completely incomprehensible.
That sounds like a joke out of the Brady Bunch. Or worse, the Dark Shadows remake! And it's a shame because David Collins used to be a great character. While it's hard to stay involved with these plots, you can still enjoy watching the characters. While the story is recycled, what's new are the ghosts. Jim Storm does an amazing job as the arrogant and evil Gerard. He has a great sinister look and is a true threat in the story. But the one that draws me in is Kate Jackson as Daphne Harridge. Daphne is beautiful, and whenever her spirit is present, the smell of lilacs engulfs the room. Kate Jackson had just graduated from the American Academy of Dramatic Arts just 2 months prior, and she wanted to learn everything she could. She would come in on her off days just to observe the other actors, and she became friends with the crew so she could learn how everything worked behind the scenes.
While she's certainly kinder and warmer than Gerard, who isn't, she also has a dark side. In 1840, she loved Ted and Carrie. She wants them back and is pushing for the possession, and doesn't care what happens to David and Hallie. And at one point, she even tries to kill Quentin.
I don't know why you brought me here.
All I know is you're very beautiful, and I want to hold you as close as I can. I feel as if I've known you all of my life. You can tell me why your spirit cannot rest. Maybe I could help. But when she realizes that Quentin really loves her, she changes her mind. Kate Jackson brings a naturalness and subtlety to her performance.
I don't understand!
Which works great because she is not an all-out good or all-out evil character. Like a real person, she has both inside of her, as well as sadness. As a ghost, she doesn't speak. And I love watching her face and body language and trying to figure out what she's thinking. And speaking of subtlety, there's Christopher Pinnock as the full of himself hippie astrologer, Sebastian Shaw. Christopher Pinnock doesn't even remember playing this character. He thinks he's so forgettable. But I love how 70s he is, in the goofiest sense of the word. And he gives the story a much needed jolt of fun. I hope the two of you don't think of me as all-powerful. I'm not, you know. There are many times when I concentrate, and absolutely nothing happens. As I mentioned, this is where Catherine Lee Scott leaves the show, and Dan Curtis had her character, Maggie Evans, leave Collinwood to go to Wincliffe Sanitarium, because he thought she was crazy for leaving the series. Catherine always gave a great performance. She has this inner kindness where you can't help but care about her, making her the perfect victim. And she gets a short, but rather touching send-off, as Sebastian is driving her to Wincliffe. Sebastian, Collinwood is where I belong. I just realized if we keep going like this, we'll never see Collinwood again, or any of the people that I love. My only disappointment is with Quentin. During the 1897 story, he was such a hard-drinking cad and a one-of-a-kind character. But now, with Louis Edmonds, Roger Collins gone, they're using him as like a replacement for Roger. The way Quentin and Elizabeth confide in each other is just like how Roger and Elizabeth used to. The way he's skeptical of Barnabas and Julia's story is very much a Roger attitude. And even the way he becomes infatuated with Daphne is very much reminiscent of how Roger became infatuated with Angelique in the Adam and Eve story. No one could do Quentin like David Selby, but on the same token, no one could do Roger Collins like Louis Edmonds. And by doing the Quentin this way, you're missing out on both characters. While it may seem like I have a lot of complaints, there are moments of this story that are truly unforgettable. The last episode of this storyline is one of the best and most enjoyed episodes of the entire series, when Gerard raises his old pirates from the grave, and there's a zombie apocalypse at Collinwood. The episode has everything. The characters are in emotional turmoil, the atmosphere is frightening, and it's action-packed. And seeing zombies destroy the house and the characters running for their lives is incredibly exciting. In terms of visual design, they do a lot of creative things. I especially like how the dolls in the Rose Cottage dollhouse represent the actual people. In addition, the scene with Carolyn singing gave me one of the biggest laughs I've ever had. Maybe because they were running out of ideas, they just embraced every new thought that they had, no matter how crazy it sounded. But in a storyline with so much recycled material, those moments are what give it personality. These wonderful moments weren't enough to save Dark Shadows. The last episode of this story aired on September 23rd, 1970, and the following March, just 6 months later, the series went off the air. After Dark Shadows, Kate Jackson became an even bigger star on the TV series Charlie's Angels. but she always looked back upon Dark Shadows as a great learning experience, where she was instantly able to put everything that she learned at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts to use. Incidentally, her nickname for Dan Curtis was Chief. Catherine Lee Scott was completely surprised by the cancellation of the series, and went on to embrace the show. She became a regular at Dark Shadows conventions, and after the death of her old co-stars and friends, Joel Crothers and Grayson Hall, went on to write a book about her old Dark Shadows days, My Scrapbook Memories of Dark Shadows. It was the first of several books.
Some people have complaints about the Adam and Eve story and the Leviathan story, but this has been my least favorite storyline so far. It's Dark Shadows, so I like it, and the zombies are groovy, but I can't get over that such an imaginative series is repeating itself in such a major way. So I give it 2 impromptu concerts out of 4. Thank you for watching Dusty Old Movies, and have a redundant day.